Hello. My name is Tonya Octave. I am a psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and coach. The truth is, I often share things with my clients at the beginning of our work. And one of the things that I say is, we carry more than just our stories. Whether we realize it or not, we carry the echoes of generations that came before us, their joys, their survival strategies, their unspoken grief, and their unfinished business. Oh, sometimes these echoes or whispers show up as anxiety we can't explain, cycles we can't even seem to break, or even beliefs about ourselves that feel just too deep to just simply think away. This isn't a weakness. It's not about a failure. It is a legacy of what has been passed down, often without words, but deeply imparted into the body, into the mind, and the spirit. And so, as my work continues, and whether or not that is as a psychotherapist or a hypnotherapist or even a wellness coach, that I've sat with so many individuals who come to me saying, I know why I feel this way, but I'm stuck. Something's going on. I feel some way, and part of that is me feeling stuck. And their insight is strong and their willpower is fierce. And yet, change just remains just out of reach for many. The reason: true healing often requires going deeper than talk therapy alone. It asks us to look beneath the surface of conscious thought and explore the subconscious and the unconscious mind, whether it's an emotional memory, a survival pattern, or even this ancestral imprints quietly live. It is real. And this is why I've created the talk Beyond Inheritance, Releasing Generational Trauma. Because healing is not just about managing symptoms or understanding our pain intellectually. Healing is about working at the level where these patterns reside. It's also about creating the space within to choose differently, to reclaim with wellness, freedom, and what balance may look like for you. Today, we will explore how trauma and generational trauma really affects us not only emotionally, but biologically through things in science like epigenetics. We will discuss why the tools we often turn to, like CBD or EMDR, or even talk therapy, and although incredibly valuable, may not really fully reach the place where these inherited wounds live. And most importantly, we explore what is possible when we combine this understanding with holistic and integrative approaches like hypnosis and subconscious reprogramming, and even my Octaves method, an approach really designed to honor the whole person, the body, mind, and spirit. So let's begin. I invite you to take a moment, getting comfortable, grabbing a piece of paper and a pencil, and maybe opening up some notes on your phone, whatever helps you to stay engaged and reflect as we move through this experience together. Take a breath, settle in, and really just allowing yourself the space to receive. As we journey through these conversations, I'll be sharing some insights, some science, even some personal stories and pathways towards healing. And if what I share resonates with you, if you feel the stirrings of possibilities, I also offer ways that we can continue this work together in the future. So, healing is not about erasing the past, it is about releasing what we no longer need, what no longer belongs to us, and making space for life how it's meant to be, how it's meant to be experienced. So let's begin going beyond inheritance and into freedom. So, what is epigenetics? Let's talk a little bit about that. Epigenetics really is the study of how our behaviors, environment, and life experiences really can influence the way our genes are expressed without altering the underlying DNA sequence itself. You can think of your DNA like a sheet of music of your body, and it is passed down through your lineage. But how the music is performed, let's say, which notes are amplified or softened or silenced, is influenced by the body's epigenetic mechanisms. The score remains, but the performance can change depending on the conductor, the instruments, even the mood of the room. So within the body, the performance is guided by biological mechanisms such as DNA methylation or histone modification, even non-coding RNA interactions. These biochemical switches can turn genes on or off, regulating functions like stress responses, our immune system activity, metabolism, and emotional regulation. One of the most profound discoveries in this field is that epigenetic change can be passed down through generations. That means trauma experienced in one generation may leave chemical imprints on the next, even if the descendants did not directly endure the original event. Huh? This is not about gene mutations, but about inherited patterns in how our genes are just turned on or off in response to life conditions. Imagine your great 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 grandfather forced into some type of survival mode under the weight of enslavement or oppression. The flood of stress hormones that help him to endure may have left little epigenetic marks on his DNA. I'm not going to even say little, probably like huge epigenetic marks on his DNA. Marks that influenced how his descendants' bodies prepare for danger, regulate emotions, and even metabolize stress. Science now supports, what many cultures and oral histories have long kind of expressed and believed. The body remembers what the mind may not be able to name. Similarly, consider descendants of the Holocaust survivors. Groundbreaking research found that children of survivors exhibited lower baseline cortisol levels. And cortisol, remember, is the stress hormone, and altered gene methylation associated with stress regulation. Huh? Not due to even their personal experience, but as a result of these inherited biological responses to trauma. Oh no. Even in another study on the Dutch hunger winter, which was observed that prenatal famine exposure really altered gene expression in offspring, leading to higher risk of obesity, diabetes, and emotional regulation decades later. These findings really illuminate a critical truth. Just as we inherit things like our eye color or curly hair, we may also inherit adaptations to trauma, that hypervigilance, that anxiety, ooh, that grief, encoded not in the stories we tell, but in the biology of our cells. You know, the science of trauma echoes and it moves through our bloodlines. Over the last 2 decades, scientific research has confirmed that many ancestral cultures, healers, and storytellers have long known that trauma does not end with the individual. It leaves these psychological traces that just ripple through the family line, shaping emotional responses, health outcomes, and relational patterns for generations and generations. The idea that we carry the burden of survival, stress response, grief, fear, and emotional suppression as a biological inheritance is no longer just metaphorical. It is measured through epigenetic markers, particularly differentially methylated positions called DMPs on the genome. Science can now prove it. These molecular tags really influence whether certain genes are expressed or silenced. For the Holocaust survivors and their descendants, even additional studies by, Rachel Yehida and her colleagues demonstrated that children of these Holocaust survivors show epigenetic alterations in a specific gene called FKBP5, a regulator of the stress hormone gene. This dysregulation leads to lower cortisol levels and a heightened sensitivity to stress, a biological adaptation passed down despite the children never even directly being exposed to the original trauma. And even with the Dutch hunger winter, which occurred between, I think it was like the 1940s for about a year, pregnant women who were exposed to this type of famine during birth, during the period and gave birth to children, those children decades later had these altered methylation in the gene IGF2, which really plays a role in growth and metabolism. These children faced increased risk for metabolic disorders, for cardiovascular disease, even emotional challenges. There's even another report that I read on the Syrian refugees across 3 generations. And this was more of a longitudinal study on Syrian refugees who were exposed to violence, found significant epigenetic signatures in 3 generations of family members. The trauma of war and displacement left measurable methylation patterns on stress-related genes, suggesting that inherited trauma responses may persist across generations. These findings are not isolated. I've done studies and I've read information on methylation and the remodeling of genes and turning genes on and off. And, the most consistent epigenetic mechanism linked to trauma inheritance really across all human studies was done in 2025. And that it was a broad case. And it really looked at how the underscores that methylation and chromatin remodeled are some of the most consistent epigenetic mechanisms linked to this inherited trauma. So, why does this matter clinically? These discoveries really help explain why individuals may struggle with things like anxiety and hypervigilance and emotional overwhelm. Even their personal life circumstances may seem stable and safe. It kind of reframes their responses not as a weakness, but maybe as an inherited adaptation of survival or for survival, protective mechanisms that made sense just in another time in another place. Yet without conscious acknowledgement of healing and how this process works, these inherited problems can persist as barriers to one's well-being, limiting our capacity for joy, connection, even emotional safety. This is where healing begins, by recognizing what we carry may not have started with us, but that what has been passed down can also be released. There's that debate on epigenetic inheritance and exploring the complexities and scientific integrity. As compelling as some of the evidence on transgenerational epigenetic inheritance is, it's important to acknowledge that the field still remains dynamic complex, and even controversial. Not all scientists agree of how reliable these epigenetic changes are transmitted across generations in humans, nor on the exact pathways by which the transmission occurs. So, what is this debate all about? I guess the central questions in the debate are: how stable are epigenetic marks like DNA methylation across generations? And are these marks most clearly away? Or are these marks mostly cleared away or reset during the formation of eggs and sperm? Or can they sometimes survive this process and influence future generations? I think that would be another question. A third question in terms of the debate is: how much of what we observe is shaped by biology versus learned family behaviors and social environments? There was also another recent study in 2025, and it was called "Can Trauma from Violence Be Genetically Inherited?" The debate rages, and that was by Nadav 2025, and really highlights some of these questions, noting that while many studies report kind of consistent trauma-related methylation patterns, others emphasize the role of family dynamics, relational modeling, and cultural transmission. In animal models, scientists can directly observe this through inherited biological changes. However, human studies present a little bit more of a complexity because of social, emotional, and cultural factors that are just deeply intertwined with biology. So, the three main pathways of inherited trauma. Trauma and survival patterns have been passed down through a combination of biology, behavioral, and cultural channels. These patterns often overlap, maybe reinforcing each one in maybe seen and also in unseen ways. So let's look at biological inheritance. This pathway involves how trauma experiences, such as things like chronic stress, famine, violence, or grief, create chemical changes in how the gene functions. These changes don't rewrite the DNA code itself, but it kind of adds or removes chemical tags, such as methyl groups, or, that tell the body whether to activate or silence certain genes. And some of these chemical markers may be passed from parent or to child through the sperm or egg, kind of shaping how the next generation's body is responding to stress, metabolizing nutrients, and really regulating emotions. In other words, trauma doesn't change the DNA blueprint itself, but it just influences how the blueprint gets read. Let's look at the behavioral modeling perspective, how we learn behaviors in our families. Children often take in emotional survival strategies by observing their caregivers. If it's a parent or primary caregiver, who that may be, carries these unresolved traumas, and copes with it through hypervigilance, maybe emotional withdrawal, maybe even perfectionism. These children will start to adapt these coping patterns as their normal way of being. Like some examples might be avoiding conflict because anger was associated with danger, or seeking perfection as a way to earn safety or love, suppressing your feelings because vulnerability, was unsafe at home. These patterns are learned through experiences and emotional attunement, not through DNA, but through the nervous system's response to relational environmental stuff. So now let's look a little bit at cultural and relational factors, that family system stuff and the social storytelling. Sometimes trauma is transmitted not through genes or modeling, but through maybe the emotional climate of the family or community. These may include things like unspoken grief that hangs in the air, cultural messages like "stay quiet to survive," or "we don't talk about our feelings." Patterns of emotional absence where love is conditional or expression is suppressed. These cultural and relational dynamics create a shared emotional atmosphere that influences how each generation learns to process emotions, handle conflict, and relate to safety or danger. This can also include the collective trauma of colonization, slavery, genocide, even forced migration. So when do these pathways overlap? Often these three pathways, the biological, behavioral, and cultural, interact and reinforce each other. A body that is biologically primed for hypervigilance becomes more reactive in stressful situations. Learned family behaviors like emotional avoidance deepen disconnection. Cultural silence prevents acknowledgement and processing of grief or loss. Understanding these overlapping pathways really helps to create a more compassionate, integrative approach to healing, one that acknowledges the full spectrum of what we inherited and what we can transform. So by embracing this complexity, we move beyond blame and maybe towards liberation. The pain I carry may not have started with me, but the choice to heal begins here, right? The pain I carry may not have started with me, but the choice to heal begins here. So healing and where these patterns live and how to think about like hypnosis, neuroplasticity, and even some complementary modalities. The healing inherited trauma really asks us to go beyond just understanding stories. It really asks us to reach into the places where these stories live, not just in the conscious mind, but in the nervous system, the subconscious part of the mind, the unconscious part of the mind, and the body itself. Many traditional therapies work primarily with the conscious mind, that part of the brain responsible for logic, reasoning, and willpower, decision making, that stuff. But the survival patterns we inherit often reside beneath this level, really embedded in the subconscious and unconscious mind, where emotional memory, automatic responses, and protective beliefs are stored. This is where approaches like hypnosis and other maybe somatic-based therapies are essential. So how do we get to doing the deeper work with the deeper mind? How do we use hypnosis? Hypnosis is often really misunderstood as being about control or unconsciousness. In reality, it is a focused, relaxed state of heightened awareness and suggestibility. This state really allows the analytical part of the mind, something called the critical faculty or critical mind, really to soften, opening direct communication to the subconscious. How beautiful is that? That we now have a different tool that we can use for our healing. In this state, the subconscious mind becomes more receptive to new messages, healing imagery, and corrective emotional experiences. Hypnosis doesn't force change. It invites the deeper mind to explore new possibilities for safety, self-worth, and freedom. Scientific studies have shown that hypnosis reliability really reduces anxiety, trauma responses, and maladaptive coping mechanisms. Even in a meta-analysis by Valentine, and this was around 2019 when it was published, confirmed that hypnosis is an effective intervention for anxiety disorders, creating positive outcomes across a wide range of participants. So what's the connection between hypnosis and neuroplasticity, that rewiring of the brain stuff? The healing potential of hypnosis is also supported by neuroscience. Hypnosis helps the brain shift into alpha and theta brain waves. These states we enter when we go into meditation or a creative flow or even at the edge of sleep. In these brain wave states, The brain's defenses relax and the neuroplasticity, the brain's natural ability to form new connections is enhanced. Trauma creates well-worn neural pathways that keep the body kind of stuck into cycles of fear, stuck into hypervigilance and avoidance, stuck into shame. Hypnosis can create the conditions for new, healthier pathways to form. Pathways that support calm instead of reactivity. Pathways that support self-compassion instead of harsh self-criticism. That is no longer helpful. Pathways that support freedom to feel safe and vulnerable, love, and connection. And then there are complementary kind of healing modalities. And while hypnosis offers these powerful routes into the subconscious transformation, healing is often most also effectively supported by multiple modalities. And so there's a modality called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, also known as EMDR, which uses eye movements to help process traumatic memories stored in the nervous system. I always believe in working with the family, so internal family systems therapy, really engaging with the parts within us, the protector parts, the exiled, wounded parts to bring healing and integration. And then somatic experiencing, a body-focused therapy that helps kind of release trauma stored in the nervous system through a gentle awareness and movement. And then there's mindfulness-based stress reduction, which really helps bring presence and compassion to the body, to the breath and emotional state. And really each of these approaches share common understandings that trauma is not just a story, it is also a survival strategy just interwoven into the body, mind, and spirit. And so when we use these modalities and we combine them with hypnosis and subconscious reprogramming, the healing process moves beyond insight alone. It touches the places where trauma lives and invites us into those places, into safety, into releasing, and into restoration. So how do we bring this all together? And how do I incorporate healing through the Octaves method? Healing generational trauma is not about fixing what is broken. It is about gently meeting the parts of us that carried survival strategies for too long. Healing becomes possible when we address these patterns at every level: the body, the mind, and the spirit, because trauma lives in all three places. This understanding, which is what guided me to create the Octave method, which is a 7-pointed integrated framework designed to support healing on every level where it is inherited or learned and where trauma resides. The Octave method really invites not just an insight, but a true transformation. And so let me talk about the 7-point frames for healing the body, mind, and spirit. And so that is included in the Octaves method. It's an acronym based on my last name, something very simple and easy. O is really about bringing awareness to the spirit. We begin with maybe mindful observation, the practices of becoming the compassionate witness to your own experience. And these can include things like building spiritual connection, curiosity, and the ability to just observe thoughts, emotions, and body sensations without judgment. Awareness is at the first step, towards making change. And I say first step, this is an integrated process, not a sequential process. And so C is for compassion, really cultivating emotional safety. Compassion is really at the heart of healing. Many trauma patterns come from environments where empathy and emotional safety really were missing. In this part of the Octaves method, we focus on nurturing the ego. The ego health, the self-kindness, the emotional regulation, helping you offer yourself and care and understanding that may not have been available to you in the past. And then there's therapy. The science part, using these evidence-based tools for emotional healing. Therapeutic work supports the mind's healing by engaging both the conscious insights and the subconscious transformation. And in this section, I offer trauma-sensitive tools. Things that I practice would include psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, things like CBT, hypnosis and subconscious programming, trauma-sensitive interventions, biofeedback, nutritional consultations to support emotional well-being through the body-mind connection. These approaches help not only in understanding your patterns, but also in rewiring the emotional and cognitive responses that hold those patterns in place. Then there's A for animals, and that is the playfulness, regulating through joy. This step invites in the healing power of play and laughter and animals to support you. I do have a therapy dog, Mona, the husky. I call her, Mona, the therapy dog, to make it simple, is often a part of this process. And research really has shown that interaction with animals and joyful play can just naturally release things like dopamine and oxytocin and promoting relaxation and safety and connection. Healing trauma doesn't always have to be heavy. Sometimes what is needed most is space to be playful, space to laugh, space to return to freedom of childlike wonder, to let joy and movement be part of the healing process. Then that brings me to V, Victals, really supporting the body through nutrition. Nutrition plays just a powerful role in emotional healing. The gut-brain connection, really influencing the mood, anxiety, stress resilience through the production of neurotransmitters like serotonin. In this section, we really explore how nutritional choices can support emotional healing, including the role of balancing blood sugar, insulin, what is going on? We talk about gut health and mindful eating practices. And then that brings me to E for exercise and movement, releasing trauma from the body. Trauma often lives in the body. It shows up in tension, holding patterns, and chronic dysregulation of the nervous system. Movement becomes a key of the healing process. This might involve, if you work with me, things like trauma-informed yoga, somatic practices, breath work, even walk therapy. These practices help safely release stored trauma and create the space for calm and a grounded presence. Then 7, socialization and relationship repair, healing and connections. Healing happens in relationships. This section really supports the cultivation of healthy connections with others. And maybe more importantly, or most importantly, the connection with yourself. Today, when I think about this, the relationship one has with themselves, it's so empowering. And together, we will explore ways to really rebuild relational safety, communication patterns, and foster authentic connections. So whether inherited trauma has taught you to withdraw, to people please, don't let me talk on about fawning in the fight or flight response, or stay small, this process supports the journey back to trust, to openness, and to belonging. So why even consider an integrative approach? Trauma touches every part of ourselves, the body, mind, and spirit. It lives in the muscles. It lives in the breath. It lives in the nervous system. It lives in the bones. It carries beliefs that we hold. And in the spaces between our relationships, by weaving together evidence-based therapy, somatic healing, nutrition, playfulness, spiritual connection, the Octave method really honors this wholeness. Healing here is not about managing symptoms. It is about creating safety, choice, and freedom where once there was only survival. You know, you are not your wound, but you may carry the echo of those who came before. Let me say that again. You are not your wound, but you may carry the echoes of those that came before. Before we begin the next session, I want you to find, this is going to be a meditation. So, I want you to find a space that is safe and comfortable where you can fully relax. However, please don't listen to this meditation if you're driving, operating machinery, or doing any tasks that may require your active attention. But you're at a place where you're going to give yourself permission to pause, to settle, and to offer yourself this time. This is your space. This space is yours. This is your healing. The healing is yours. And so as you settle, we begin with a gentle breathing practice known as alternate nostril breathing. It's a technique often used to help balance the nervous system and create harmony. And so we breathe with our right hand towards our face. And in a gentle way, close your right nostril with your thumb as you inhale slowly through the left nostril. Then close your left nostril with your ring finger and gently release the right nostril as you exhale fully through the right nostril. And now we inhale through the right nostril. We close the right nostril, release the left, and exhale through the left. And so you inhale through the left. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And just continue that cycle at your own pace. Inhale left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale left. Let the breath flow softly and evenly. With each breath, allow balance to return. And when you're ready, just lower your hand and return to the natural rhythm of your breath. Now taking 3 deep cleansing breaths. Inhale deeply through your nose, filling your lungs. Hold softly at the top. Exhale slowly through the mouth, releasing any tension. Again, another deep inhale. Hold gently. Exhale, letting go even further. One more time. Breathe in nourishment. Breathe out what no longer serves you. Notice the contact between your body and the ground beneath you, the support that holds without effort. With each breath, feel yourself softening, settling, releasing. And in your mind's eye, begin to visualize a long line of those who came before you, ancestors whose name you may not know, and many more whose names you may never have heard. They stand behind you, not in judgment, but in witness. Each one carrying their own stories, their own survival, their own dreams, struggles, and resilience. And in a gentle way, just acknowledging them now. You might offer a soft nod, maybe a quiet thank you, or simply just noticing their presence. I see you. I honor the path you've walked. Understand this. You do not need to carry their pain to honor their existence. You do not need to carry their pain to honor their existence. You are not your wound, but you may carry the echo of those who came before. And now you are here, choosing a different way forward. If there are burdens, fears, or patterns that do not belong to you, imagine these gently lifting from your shoulders. Perhaps they appear heavy as chains, dark smoke, tangled roots, or weighted stones. Notice them now, and as you witness them, feel their hold begin to loosen. See these burdens dissolving, breaking apart, floating away. No longer held by you, no longer needed. Release with love. Bringing your attention now to the crown of your head. Imagine a soft, warm light flowing down over your scalp, relaxing your forehead, softening the space between your eyebrows. Feel your jaw unclench, your neck and shoulders release. Let your shoulders drop, softening and softening with ease. This light continues down your arms into your hands, flowing out through your fingertips, carrying away any tension. The light moves gently across your chest, down into your belly, calming, grounding, soothing. And it flows through your hips, your knees, your thighs, all the way down to your feet and out through your toes. And with each breath, feel this healing light carrying away what no longer belongs. See the chains breaking one link at a time. The weight of old stories falling away. Picture seeds being planted in fertile soil. Seeds of healing, of choice, of new beginnings. Imagine a river flowing through you, washing clean the spaces that once held pain, but now making room for clarity, peace, and freedom. And in the quiet mind, see yourself standing at the gentle fork in the road. One path offers small, steady shifts, healing that unfolds slowly like petals opening in their own time. The other path offers deep transformation, change happening at the cellular level, where healing touches not just the mind, but the body, the DNA, the spirit, interwoven, intertwined. See your own DNA as a living spiral. With every breath, imagine light weaving through these strands, carrying messages of safety and nourishment and love. You are safe. You are whole. You are free to choose your own way forward. Notice which path feels most supportive for you right now. There is no right or wrong choice. Healing honors your rhythm. And as you continue to rest in this space, allow these words to settle deeply into your mind, into the spirit, into the body. I am worthy of healing. I am free from the weight of what does not belong to me. I carry the capacity to choose my own way forward. With every breath, balance, clarity, and peace move through me. Healing is already happening, gently, steadily, and in the ways that serve me best. When you are ready, begin to return to the space around you. Feel the support beneath you. Notice the air on your skin, and maybe in a gentle way, wiggle your fingers and toes, reconnecting fully to the present moment. Allow one more deep, nourishing breath. Inhale possibility and exhale gratitude. And when you're ready, open your eyes, bringing with you a knowing that you are free to choose your healing, not just for yourself, but for the generations in the past and the generations that will follow. By now, you may be feeling the weight and the wisdom of what you've just learned. You may recognize patterns within yourselves, cycles of fear, anxiety, perfectionism, emotional withdrawal, or even hypervigilance. And sense, perhaps for the first time, that some of what you carry may not have begun with you. But here is the truth that I hold close to my work and my heart. What was inherited can also be healed. The stories that shaped you are not the whole of you, of who you are. The burdens that were passed down are not yours to carry forever. You are not broken. You are not stuck because of lack of willpower or insight. You are here because your body, your mind, and your spirit are ready for a different way. Healing is not about forgetting the past. It is about honoring what happened, understanding how it lives within you, and choosing to release what no longer serves your life today. You know, as a psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and wellness coach, I offer a deeply integrative and compassionate space for this healing process. Whether the wounds are conscious or subconscious, lived directly or inherited, my work is a walk alongside you as we untangle the roots of these patterns and really create space for freedom, peace, connection. You know, I combine things like psychotherapy and cognitive behavioral tools, trauma-sensitive approaches and biofeedback, hypnosis and subconscious reprogramming, nutritional support for the gut-brain healing. I said the gut-brain connection. Playfulness, because I'm just going to laugh at it. Playfulness and animal-assisted healing. Sometimes if you ever get to meet Mona the Husky, she's just going to love up all on you. Mind-body practices like breath work and movement and somatic release and relational repair to rebuild trust. trust with yourself, and trust with others. This is not about a temporary relief. This is about long-lasting transformation, healing where the patterns truly live. And so if this message resonates with you, if you feel the stirrings of possibility, if you sense that now may be the time to release what is not yours to carry, I invite you to connect with me. I offer free consultations where we can explore your needs, your story, and whether this path maybe feels aligned with your healing journey. And there's never no expectations, no pressure, only an open door. Healing begins when we choose to say, this pattern stops with me. I am ready for something different. I am worthy of peace, love, and freedom for myself and for the generations that were before me and that will follow. And wherever and whenever you are ready, know that I am here to support this beautiful, beautiful healing journey. Thank you for listening.